The disc landed at a ranch at Corona, New Mexico. The rancher turned it over to the Air Force. Rancher W.W. Brazil was the man who discovered the saucer.
What I thought was a star began coming in my direction at a very rapid rate of speed.
The unidentified object, which some sources thought might be a blimp, moved slowly down the Pacific coast from Santa Monica and disappeared south of Long Beach.
I saw a UFO, and it went down the river, turned right at the United Nations, turned left, and then down the river.
UFO classified. UFO classified. No more plausible deniability. Fact, fiction, or the truth. You decide. And now, the new voice of the high desert, the hostess of UFO Classified, Erica Lukes.
Happy Friday, my friends. I hope it is as beautiful where you are as it is here in Salt Lake City. I actually got out my 1965 Ford Galaxy convertible that is canary yellow with leopard print interior, and I took it out for a spin. It always makes me so happy when spring is here, and it is a beautiful time in Utah. I want to give a special thanks to my show supporter who made very graciously, and I won't name him, but he donated to the show, and it was very kind of him. I know you know who you are. I want to thank you because your donations help keep UFO Classified on the air, and it enables me to get things out there on YouTube, and I want to thank Northern UFOs for helping me do that. And I appreciate each of you sharing information. I get lots of positive feedback, and I'm really surprised. I've been uploading, or Northern UFOs has been uploading all of my shows onto YouTube, and it is amazing how positive the comments are. That means the world to me because we know how brutal people can be in this field, people that can hide behind their computers. And so it's great to have a very thoughtful, dedicated, and professional listening audience. Tonight is going to be an incredible night. We have Jan Aldrich back for part 2. We have he has important information to share with you, and this truly is an incredible way for us to preserve history, which is something that is vital to all of us. People like Jan Aldrich, Barry Greenwood, Dr. Michael Swords, all of these people, Robert Powell, they've played such an important part in investigating, researching, preserving history as we see To the Stars Academy coming out and doing a really great job getting the media involved and taking this seriously. We have to remember our history. It is vital for us to look back on that, and Jan Aldrich can tell us all about the history. Jan Aldrich is a longtime UFO researcher who specialized his interest are specifically with UFO history and government. He was head of an incredible website and a project in 1947. It was originally an effort to document the UFO wave of 1947, and he traveled across North America to assemble as much press coverage as he could find, but eventually leading to a general attempt to explore the early years of the subject in detail. His website contains insight into obscure aspects of government involvement and of early classic reports of flying saucers, and has been gathered by first-generation figures of the period like Kehoe, Richard Hall, Ed Ruppelt, and many others. He is also the creator of Sign Historical Group that expands further on such matters. He has authored Project 1947, a preliminary report, Proceedings of Sign Historical UFO let me try that over. Proceedings of Sign Historical Group UFO History Workshops, and he co-authored one of my favorite books, and I recommend that each of you get this if you care about the subject. It is UFOs and Government and Historical Inquiry. So when Jan, you were here last time, we talked about, obviously, when we closed the show, the importance of getting involved with finding researchers in your community, getting their archives, scanning them, and preserving them, which is something that you do. Can we, just a little teeny bit, just expand on that and tell people why it's so important?
Well, last time we talked about the NICAP hidden reports, which were people that didn't want their names known. They were either on active duty or something like that. None of the reports were classified. But these reports were certified by the NICAP board, and some of them were made public without the names and anything. But the problem was there was only one copy, and when NICAP went into difficulties, nobody knows where a lot of these reports ended up, and they're lost. And they're some of the best reports that NICAP had, and to a certain extent, some of them were being held in reserve for if they ever got a chance to have a congressional hearing. And now they're just gone. So just having the report, and I know everybody has their best reports, and they got them all locked up, and they don't talk about them, and if they're going to turn their stuff over to everybody, the last thing they turn over is their best stuff. And unfortunately, a lot of people may not be around to turn over their best stuff, and it gets lost. So the thing that should be done is, as much as possible, is make copies of everything. And the best way now is scanning, and then you can give it to more than one person and move it around, and it isn't lost. It's there at least.
Exactly, and I think that you hit on a really good point. I mean, a lot of people want to glom onto their things. It's theirs, and it's kind of an ego-driven pursuit. But if we don't share things, or if we don't work with others in the field to mentor them, like you have done, like Barry has done, then we're never going to make progress, and we're going to forget all of the important work that people have done for decades.
Yes, and files have lots have been saved, but unfortunately, a lot have been lost. Angry wives and other things, a lot of cases, things just get thrown away, or people lose complete interest in it and say, I've had it and I'm throwing it in the dump. And a lot of witness testimony is just gone then. And it's unfair to the people that helped the investigators in the first place to just trash their material and their investigations.
Absolutely.
So many of these things have been lost that it's tragic. A good part of the APRO files are lost. Or let's put it this way: they're not where anybody can get them. They may still exist, but the people that have them won't relinquish them.
And there are a couple in Arizona, right?
The last we knew that a couple in Arizona was given the files by the APRO board, and they were supposed to safeguard them. Over the years, we don't know where the files are now. They may have been transferred to somebody else, or they may have just been abandoned. We're not sure.
And that is so sad. Those are significant files, and so that's really sad. I keep, from time to time, I'll try to get little bits of information about where they could be or what the saga is behind it, because there was quite a saga, and that's unfortunate that people are like that, and you're most certainly not. But I have a question here from Libertas in the chat room. He always asks incredible questions. He wants to know if you have experienced colleagues stashing information and not allowing the public access to it. UNH is stashing Betty and Barney Hill information, for example, and I would imagine your answer would be yes, you've experienced that, but who else hoards information?
Well, I'm not sure that the University of New Hampshire is hoarding it. I haven't been up there. I want to go up there and look at it, but I thought it was available to the public. However, some people are stashing their information and saying nobody can look at it for 10 years or 15 years. Or I said, this is as bad as the things we've been complaining about the government.
Right.
Not letting us look at material for years. And I know there are people that have just decided that they have something that they think is of possible value, so they're not going to give it to anybody.
And it's unfortunate, and hopefully we can get the word out and change things, or at least shine a light on that, so people maybe start thinking differently about how we're going to move forward. Absolutely. And I want to ask you, because to me this is very important, but when you first came into this subject and you decided that this was going to be a very serious study, did you experience any blowback or any negativity from your family members or the people around you?
No, I didn't have that problem. Some people have. I mean, I had no problem like that. I know some people that their spouses and or their good friends. I know people that have lost friends over UFOs because some people think UFOs are demons or belong to the devil, and they've lost some, friends that they've had for years because of this. I know a few people like that, but I generally never had any experience like that.
That's so wonderful, because it can be a very this is a subject that most people don't take seriously, or if you really pursue this and make this your life, it can alienate a lot of people. So that's good that you had a support system around you. But I want to talk a little bit about, because last time we were sharing stories, you were sharing stories about your time at NICAP, the National Investigations Committee on Aerial Phenomena. It was an incredible organization, a very pivotal organization. Let's continue with some of your great stories.
Well, I think I mentioned that the blonde Venusian, no, I don't think anybody called her that to her face, but everybody behind her back. Of course, the origin of that was that she was very tall. She was over 6 feet tall, and she was blonde, and so Abdamski's Venusians were all very tall and very attractive, and so that's how Diana Sinclair-Knopp got the blonde Venusian nickname. Now, in the Air Force files, there's the Air Force attaché from Peru sent this airline case in August of '52, just in the first few days, that he'd heard about. The pilot was flying near Lima, and he saw several objects. And so the attaché made a report to Washington, D.C., and it's in Blue Book, and you can still find it there. It's difficult to read on the microfilm, but it's there. Well, like I said, the blonde Venusian, she would pick up material in Spanish and translate it just when she had some spare time. One of the things she translated was for an interview with this pilot, although at the time, of course, we didn't know anything about the Blue Book files because they were inaccessible. She had picked up an interview with this pilot done by a local newspaper, so it was in Spanish, so she translated it. It turns out that the pilot was an American. Now, many Americans had gone, many pilots after the Second World War, or after the Korean War, they had gone to airlines overseas to fly, and they had the experience, so foreign airlines would hire them as a cadre. And this man was an American, and so he gave an interview on it. It was much later when we got the Blue Book files that we could actually marry up the report that was in Project Blue Book with the pilot's interview. To me, that's an amazing happenstance. This was sort of these things happen quite often, and it's very satisfying when they do.
And talk about, because I want to just give a little brief history, because there are younger people out there that don't understand the historical significance of Project Blue Book.
Well, Project Blue Book was the third UFO project that the Air Force embarked on. There was Project Sign, which was the first one. Then there was Project Grudge, and finally, Grudge metamorphosed into Project Blue Book, and that was from 1952 until the Air Force got out of the business in '69. That was the name of the official UFO project. In the beginning of Project Blue Book, they had a large number of personnel for such a project. Later on, it was confined to maybe 2 or 3 people and a secretary. But when Ruppelt was the head of it, he had a number of lieutenants and enlisted assistant and a secretary, and he had a number of people to assist him. Later on, sometimes it was down to just one person. They collected thousands, over 10,000 reports, and most of these have been microfilmed, and they're available from the National Archives, and in some cases they're available to loan to local institutions. If you're close to a branch of the National Archives, you can go and see some of these microfilms. But there's about 100,000 pages of material on UFOs within the files of this project.
That's incredible. I don't think most people know that.
No, it's very. I can't say that I've looked at every page, but I've looked at quite a few. I think somebody that's probably looked at more than me is Brad Sparks, and he has been extracting cases which he calls his preliminary unknown list. In other words, he's looked at some of the explanations that the Air Force came out with, and in some cases has either discarded them or decided to look further at them. So he's got a preliminary list of about 1,700 cases, which he thinks are significant and should be looked at more thoroughly. Now, in some cases, the Air Force, as one of the officers that was always in the chain of command of the Air Force, said, listen, yes, you may be able to figure out what some of these cases are, but then you can say, well, then they're probably this, or there's nothing in the description that doesn't say it's a balloon or an airplane or something else, and so it's possibly this. So they had degrees of how much they thought maybe their explanations were good, and they were always upgrading. If it was a possible, it became a probable, and then it became a unknown. But some of these cases became a possible because somebody would say something like this: well, it looks like it was floating by like a balloon for a second or two, and then it took off at a tremendous speed. So they saw this thing that said, it looks like it was a balloon floating for a few seconds. Oh, it's a balloon. And that's it.
Right.
And there's plenty of cases in there like this. And I think we should talk about the guy the man that proposed this. His name is Colonel Harold Watson, and he was death on UFOs, and he didn't like them at all. And he headed the facility or the laboratory that the predecessor of Project Blue Book, Project Grudge, belonged to. So they were his people. He was, like I said, he was in the chain of command of Project Blue Book almost the whole time it existed. With the exception of a few years in the early 50s, he was there from about 67 or 66 to back all the way to 1954.
And we're going to talk more about that. We've got to take a break, and I hate to cut you off, but we're going to talk more about Colonel Watson because I know this is very, very important. I'm here with Jan Aldrich. Thanks for getting into chat. We will take our first break, and we will be back.
Stand by. This is UFO Classified with Erica Lukes. The phone lines are open now at 702-425-9230. That's 702-425-9230. Worldwide callers use Skype name KCOR Radio. More UFO Classified with Erica Lukes on the KCOR Digital Radio Network. After this.
In the shadows, a voice cries out. Evidence that you're not alone.
You said my name. What is your name?
Proof that the living and the dead coexist. Or do they? Every Wednesday night, 6 p.m. Pacific, 9 p.m. Eastern, join writer, producer, and paranormal investigator Greg Bakken on Ghost Box Radio as he explores, interviews, and investigates evidence alongside some of the best in the paranormal community and beyond.
6 people killed.
Ghost Box Radio, Wednesday nights exclusively on the KCOR Digital Radio Network, because the dead don't sleep. Ghost Box Radio.
It's great. I think it's great. It's great.
The all-new KCOR Digital Radio Network.
Great. Please make a note of it. It's great!
The Fenton Files, where it's all connected.
You see, whoever controls technology controls the world.
Come explore a universe full of possibilities. Every Monday night at 8 p.m. Pacific, 11 p.m. Eastern. The Fenton Files. Go where no other show has gone before.
You can deny all the things I've seen, all the things I've discovered, but not for much longer. Because too many others know what's happening out there.
Whether it be UFOs, aliens, conspiracies, or even consciousness, your host, Lorian Fenton, has a file for that. The Fenton File. Your journey to the truth is but a file away. Live, Monday nights, 8 p.m. Pacific, 11 p.m. Eastern, exclusively on the KCOR Digital Radio Network. The Fenton Files.
Incredibly intense.
Where truth is just waiting to be discovered.
Monday nights are about to become hauntingly good, as Reverend Sean Whittington possesses the airwaves with Vegas Supernatural. Tune in every Monday at 5 p.m. Pacific, 8 p.m. Eastern for Vegas Supernatural, exclusively on the KCOR Digital Radio Network. There's a war raging between good and evil. The question is, which side are you fighting on? Tune in Monday nights as Reverend Sean Whittington sets the new standard for paranormal radio with some of the most influential personalities in the world today. Vegas Supernatural, hosted by Reverend Sean Whittington, every Monday night at 5 p.m. Pacific, 8 p.m. Eastern, exclusively on the KCOR Digital Radio Network. The one show even the devil doesn't want you to hear.
You're listening to UFO Classified with Erica Lukes, where the truth isn't hidden beneath the black lines of a Sharpie.
That's the craziest thing I've ever heard.
To be on with Erica, call 702-425-9230. That's 702-425-9230. Worldwide callers use Skype name KCOR Radio.
Radio contact.
Share your thoughts on the show on Twitter by using hashtag KCOR. Or head over to the live chats at KCORradio.com.
The audience goes nuts!
And now, your host of UFO Classified.
Are you ready?
Erica Lukes.
Welcome back and happy Friday, my friends. It is always a great honor to be here and to spend Friday night with you and to start off with the great line of shows, including Tina Marie on Restricted Airspace, Hyperspace with Solaris Blue Raven, and of course Willie Miranda, who has a brand new show right after mine. I'm in great company here. I always say this, but I truly love being on KCOR. Thank you, Tina, for providing such a great and respectable network. You are the best. I am here with someone who has more experience and more knowledge than most anybody I've ever talked to. His name is Jan Aldrich. He is a longtime UFO researcher, archivist, and he has a wonderful website, Project 1947. You can find that. I will be posting links, as I have been on my Facebook page, UFO Classified, and I will post that on ufoclassified.com so you can go there and start studying, because there's so much to learn. Before our break, we were talking a little bit about the Blue Book files, about National Archives. Brad Sparks came up, who is a really great researcher that I would like to get on the show. I know it's not going to happen, but yeah, you never know. And then we talked about Colonel Watson. So Jan, let's continue with Colonel Watson. He was an interesting fellow.
Well, he was. During the Second World War, he was in Europe. And he was in intelligence then, and he had a squadron of top flight pilots. And what they would do is they would find abandoned or crashed Axis aircraft, and they would repair them. And these guys were these guys were brave because America didn't have any jets at the time, and they're flying German jets. So they were called Watson's Wizards, and they would fly them back away from the war front, where they could be examined, and then eventually, as the war wound down, and as it ended, Watson went all over the place and collected advanced aircraft from the Germans. They sent them to France, and another important man in ufology is Colonel Seashore, and he had a project that was called Seahorse, and he put these German aircraft with some of the engineers and some of the test pilots on an aircraft carrier, and they went to the United States, and they ended up at after a long time they ended up at Wright Field out in Ohio, and Watson came and took that over in about 1949. The intelligence, technical intelligence assets at Wright Field, he was in charge of them. It was, at the time, it was called TID, Technical Intelligence Department. To illustrate something about Watson, I put an article from Cosmopolitan in 1950, which Bob Considine, a very famous newscaster at the time, wrote. It's called The Shameful Flying Saucer Hoax. And Watson said, and he's ridiculing his own pilots in here. Watson said, it's just terrible, and it's all hoaxes, and it's all fools and publicity hounds and all those type of people. That's what we've got, and we've got people that are trying to make a buck off this. So that was his attitude towards UFOs.
And I have to tell people, you can find this article, which I will say I've read several times, and my jaw was on the floor. I was so absolutely disgusted by this article. But you can find it, on your website. And this is important to read because this was the attitude.
Yes, it was. Hello. Are we there?
Yeah, we are here.
Oh, okay. I thought maybe we dropped out. So, let me tell you another thing about Watson. Now, he has 300 people that are working for him, and he has pilots, and he has planes, and he is doing all kinds of different projects for the government. I mean, he's doing all kinds of aviation and projects. There's hundreds of them going on, and he's the people at Wright Field. They've got their fingers in all of them, and the Soviets tested an atomic device, and it was Watson's pilots up there that found out that they had planes equipped with special devices to detect atomic devices, explosions, and he was the one that found this. So he's an important character in history. And one of the people out at Wright Field that knew Watson, he said, if you ever looked at this guy, you could see his eyes almost burned you when he looked at you. He was so dynamic and so hard charging, and he was a colonel at the time, but his ambition was to be in charge of Air Force intelligence as a 4-star general. So this man has he's courageous, he's He's a leader. They were willing to follow him and go up in aircraft that may crash and kill them to get these aircraft back to the rear areas. So he was a real leader. But he did have one thing against UFOs. So he was, at the time, he was a rather, he was always in the chain of command of Project Blue Book. That's the thing. So people couldn't get too out of control there.
Oh, excuse me, go ahead.
Yeah, if I could go back to the very beginning of the UFO project. So Kenneth Arnold had his sighting on the 24th of June. And Kenneth Arnold went to the Boise paper, and one of the men at the Boise paper was one of the aviation editors, was also important in the Air Force, and he had initiated the Idaho National Air Guard, and he was an important figure. And his name was Johnson, and he was not afraid to just pick up the phone and call Wright Field. And who did he get? He said he wanted to talk to General Twining, who was at the time head of at Wright Field. Now, General Twining was in charge of all the logistics, the supplies, the material. He was at the Air Materiel Center. He was in charge of this. He's a lieutenant general. Johnson got on the phone with Twining. I think they knew each other. I'm not sure. But he got on the phone with Twining. Now, this is the 2nd of July. Arnold had just had his sighting on the 24th. So he's just talking to General Twining. He says, General, I think you ought to look into this flying saucer business. I want to tell you about Arnold's sighting. I want to tell you about another man's sighting. His name is Rankin, who was he was a very famous aviator at the time, and so this man had a sighting of 9 UFOs, and also the forest rangers near where Arnold was, who had seen objects flashing in the distance from their fire lookout tower. And so Twining got off the phone, and one of the first things he did is he wrote a little memo. He says his deputy and the man that was in charge of engineering at Wright Field, he wrote him a little note. He told him what Johnson had told him, and he put a little note on top of it. We're going to start investigating this now. Twining was authorized to do that on his own. He didn't have to ask permission of anybody. He was authorized to set up an interim project, and that's exactly what he did. Of course, he told the boss about it afterwards, but he was authorized to do it without any further authority, and that's what he did. So the project started out there at Wright Field. Now, the guys in Washington thought that they ought to control what was going on. So for a while there was a lot of investigations out of Washington, D.C. Finally, it sort of settled down that it would be the investigations would be handled by the intelligence people at Wright Field in Ohio, and one of the the man that was in charge of that, or the man that was the civilian who worked there, was designated. His name is Alfred Loading. Wendy Connors and Mike Hall did a lot of research on this man Loading, and they also talked to him. He passed away a long time ago, but his relatives and family members, they were able to talk to him. He had a UFO sighting in the 30s, and it so impressed him that he wrote to his congressman and said, "I don't know what this thing is, but it's completely something that I haven't seen before." So he's already had an experience with this. So Loading was more or less, he writes about himself that he is the initiator of Project Sign, which is the first UFO program. Now, if you read Ruppelt and stuff, Project Sign was finally authorized as a formal project. Before this, just under Twining's authority. But they were authorized as a formal Air Force project in the 30th of December of 1947. And they began operations there as an official Air Force project, and they had a budget from... And so Loading was one of the primary men in charge. He was the project monitor. He was the senior civilian that was on the project. Now, as they went through and started investigating UFOs, about summertime, some of these guys decided that UFOs were interplanetary. And as everybody knows, there's the estimate of the situation. And that was sent up through the chain of command. Now, everybody seems to think that the chain of command was the intelligence chain of command. No. Wright Field and Air Materiels Command worked for the logistics side of the Air Force. So this report went up through that chain. Now, the intelligence people at Washington, they also got a copy of it. But somewhere along the line, it was kicked back. Now, a lot of people think that it was the Vice Chief of Staff of the Air Force, Vandenberg, which it may have been. He was not too happy with UFOs either. And it got kicked back. So then, after that, Project Sign kind of wilted. Everybody saw that they were on the wrong political side here with Project Sign, and a lot of people started to jump ship, see if they could find another project to work for. When they were in the summer of 48, when it was going great guns, everybody wanted to work on it. Loading was also a German, so he was also friendly with the German scientists there. Now, the Project Sign in 1949 changed over to Project Grudge. And about this time, Colonel Watson came and took over the technical intelligence department at Wright Field. And he noticed that Loading, and some of the people that had worked for him still had this idea that UFOs were interplanetary. They were looking at unusual or unidentified objects, and they were saying, you know, there's a possibility that these are spaceships. Now, here's what one of Watson's officers said. One of his deputies said, "We were interested in UFOs, but we weren't interested in flying saucers." A lot of the things that they were interested in were things seen on the border with Russia, and Loading and some of his people, some of the people that had worked with him, said, you know, these seem like UFOs. They're not any kind of aircraft or anything. There's something weird. So Watson had enough of that. His deputy said, "We're interested in unidentified objects. We're not interested in flying saucers." And he told his deputy, "Get rid of the saucer boys." And I call this the purge of the saucer boys. The people that had worked on Project Sign and were friendly to the idea of interplanetary UFOs, for some reason or another, they were let go. Or they were encouraged to leave. And some of them were fired. Their efficiency reports were downgraded. People like Loading, he had an exemplary efficiency report through his whole tour there of over a decade. He had invented weapons for in the Second World War, but all of a sudden he became a marginal engineer, and he was one of the few engineers that were there. A lot of these guys at Wright Field had learned by doing. I mean, there wasn't a lot of aviation schools or things like that. They invented this stuff. But Loading had engineer training, and he was a top person in this thing. And all of a sudden, his efficiency reports say that he's just a marginal character. He's hardly contributing. And he was the last one fired. So they got rid of the saucer boys. That's the way this officer talked about it. He said, you know, if we got together over a beer and talked about flying saucers, we called that saucer talk. People that believed in flying saucers, they were saucer boys. And so Loading was dismissed. Almost immediately, he got a job at the Navy in Washington. And he ended up back at Wright Field, but not working for Watson. Later on, in the Air Force, in 1954, he did a full-page interview for a New Jersey paper close to where he lived. This was after he retired. And somebody had told him about, it had maybe been General Vandenberg that had kicked back the estimate of the situation. And Loading acted like that was his, the estimate of the situation was his, and he said, well, I never knew who kicked it back. But that's, I guess that's why my stock fell at ATIC. Like I say, Watson went overseas, and for that period of time, we get the start of Project Blue Book. Now, if you go to UFO evidence, see how all this thing really connections are kind of weird. If you go to UFO evidence on page 23, it says Technical Intelligence Center official observes disc sharp turn. This is in 1951. This is when Watson is still there. This intelligence official that worked at Wright-Patterson, a UFO had paced his car while he was driving close to Dayton, Ohio. And this is a hidden report. So NICAP got this as a hidden report years afterwards. Why didn't this intelligence official, I take it that he is a civilian, why didn't he report this? I think the obvious answer is that he didn't want to run afoul of Colonel Watson.
And that is incredible to me, but it shouldn't be surprising because this is the type of thing that is still taking place. People are you've got these people in power that have their own agendas and their own belief systems, and so they're going to shut down funding for really important research.
Right. Now, one of the things that, like I told you, Wendy and Mike Hall, they wrote a book called Alfred Loading and the 1947 UFO Wave. Wendy was she had been in the Air Force as an enlisted person, so she knew a lot about the Air Force.
And I've got to cut you off right there, of course, where we will talk about her and more hidden reports and all sorts of stuff. I am Erica Lukes here on UFO Classified with Jan Aldrich. We will take a break and be right back.
Listen very carefully.
This is Houston. Say again, please. Houston, we've had a problem.
This is UFO Classified, live every Friday night, 4 p.m. Pacific, 7 p.m. Eastern, exclusively on the KCOR Digital Radio Network. The truth is out there, just waiting to be discovered.
And now, if you will, accompany me on a journey to the future.
For more information on the host of UFO Classified, Erica Lukes, upcoming guests, as well as links to the past shows,
visit her website at ufoclassified.com.
UFO Classified.
UFO Classified.
This is KCOR Las Vegas, home of the Digital Radio Network, broadcasting from a shack just south of Area 51.
Wait, that doesn't exist.
This is the KCOR Digital Radio Network. Now for the news.
Now, broadcasting in digital HD radio.
The disc landed at a ranch at Corona, New Mexico. The rancher turned it over to the Air Force. Rancher W.W. Brazil was the man who discovered the saucer.
What I thought was a star began coming in my direction at a very rapid rate of speed.
The unidentified object, which some sources thought might be a blimp, moved slowly down the Pacific coast from Santa Monica and disappeared south of Long Beach.
I saw a UFO, and it went down the river, turned right at the United Nations, turned left, and then down the river.
UFO Classified.
UFO Classified.
No more plausible deniability. Fact, fiction, or the truth. You decide. And now, the new voice of the high desert, the hostess of UFO Classified, Erica Lukes.
Welcome back to the second half of UFO Classified. I would like to thank all of you, Libertas, Joe, Jeff, Northern UFOs, Tim, David, Amy, all of you for spending Friday evenings with me, for having respectful and intelligent dialogue. This is, I really value all of you, and I look forward to Friday nights and getting my guests on. I have, of course, been busy at work, spending probably more time on research than I actually did my business, which is not a good thing, but I want to just give a shout out to Mike DeMonte, Punk Rock and UFOs. He's been on the show before. He did a brief article with 3 current researchers, including myself, where he talked about our day jobs and in relation to UFO research and how that impacts all of us. I want to again thank Northern UFOs for getting the shows out on YouTube. And if you could share any of these, just get them out to your social media followers and friends. I would really appreciate that. I want the show to grow, and I really feel this is a pivotal time for good information to get out there, and we have to remember history because this is our building block. My guest tonight, Jan Aldrich, has been researching UFOs for decades, and he has a website that you need to go to, and I've been posting links in the chat room. It's Project 1947. I will post links, post articles, go there, read, learn, and let's get this going on and get a younger generation exposed to factual information. Jan, when we left off, we were talking about the NICAP hidden reports, the estimate of the situation, which we talked about on break. And so I want people to go to your website to see the quote from Fournet with regards to the estimate of the situation. But let's continue. Watson, loading, all of these things. Wendy Connors.
Okay, so you said you wanted me to talk a little bit about the estimate. I guess nobody alive now has seen it. Hynek said he saw it, Fournet said he saw it, and Ruppelt said he saw it. Essentially, it was a top secret document. It had some of the best UFO reports that Project Sign had come up with, and they indicated that the UFOs were intelligently controlled and probably not from Earth. At least that's what we think it said. Now, we have one clue. The estimate's little brother is the November 30th, 1948 Project Sign interim report. Now, if you really go back and look at the Twining letter, he said that periodic reports should be given on the progress of UFO investigations. And so the 30th November 1948 was an interim report that apparently echoed the estimate of the situation. Now, we don't have that document either. I've been looking for it. The archives is not too cooperative about looking for it. I think I have to go down there and personally turn pages. However, Navy intelligence analyst did get to see the interim report, and he says, I disagree with the interplanetary theory, and he quotes from the interim report. So that's how we have some evidence of what the interim report said, which supposedly echoes the estimate of the situation. It's a long way around the rosies there. Like I said, all this background has something to do with Edward Ruppelt becoming the Project Blue Book chief. About the time in 1951, Watson left to go overseas to Europe on a rotation. Now, some people think his boss, General Cabell, wanted him out of the position for a while. That's possible, but I can't prove that. Now, Wendy Connors and Mike Hall, they think that that's more than a possibility. When he wrote that Cosmopolitan article, one of the people named in the article a person who had taken a UFO film out in Montana in 1950, the Moran film, sued Considine and sued the Air Force. And that was a public relations disaster for the Air Force. They didn't like to be sued like that. So this is so maybe Watson was moved out of there, or maybe it was just a normal rotation. Anyways, he's not in Ohio anymore, and there's a new face at the in Washington named Garland. He's a brigadier general, and he had his own UFO sighting, and he starts a whole bunch of ideas to look into UFOs. Now, they've already had a rather nasty incident in which General Cabela's called people from Wright Field and asked them what the heck is going on there, because they had a UFO incident that got a lot of publicity, and it made the Air Force look bad. And he was told that there's no objectivity at Wright Field, and they're not really investigating. And so he blew his stack, and he told Garland, fix this. So, fix it is to revitalize Project Grudge, which has just about died. And let's get some people at Wright Field into the UFO investigation business. And guess what? Everybody just watched the Saucer Boys get purged. Nobody wants to be in this. Who wants to be in this? Okay, you're in the UFO investigations, and a couple of years from now, Watson comes back and fires you. So none of the high-ranking officers and none of the civilians that had been there for years didn't want to touch it. Well, the Korean War is going on. They had called up a whole bunch of reserves and reserve officers, and one of them was a World War II tail gunner on a B-29, an enlisted man who had gone through and went to aviation or aeronautical engineer school, and he has a degree now. He has a BS in aeronautical engineering, and he's a brand new lieutenant. They've just appointed him a lieutenant. He hasn't gone up through the ranks. He was an enlisted man, but now he's got a college degree. He's got a engineering degree, and he goes to the Wright Field. Who are the people that work with him? They're all reserve officers. In other words, they're going to be gone after the Korean War is over, or even before it's finished. They're all reserve officers. As little as possible, the career officers there do not want to get involved with UFOs again, because Colonel Watson isn't overseas forever. He's coming back. The same with the civilians. So some of those civilians have been there for years, and their careers are in jeopardy if they get involved with the UFO investigation again, and then Colonel Watson comes back and decides to have the second purge of the Saucer Boys. So Ruppelt, and he wasn't the first choice. There were a couple other people before him, but he ended up taking it. One of his virtues was that he knew how to type. Besides being an aeronautical engineer. Now, some of the officers in his would, if he went out on an investigation or speaking, they would go with him. They would be like minders for a while. After a while, he got to go on his own, but for a while, Colonel Kirkland, who had been in UFO investigations for a while, he would go with him. Ruppelt was a very energetic person. One of the first things he did is go to the Pentagon and start going through the intelligence libraries and asking people if they had UFO reports that hadn't been sent to Wright Field, or looking at intelligence reports on UFOs that were in the library and taking copies and taking them to Wright Field. Out of Wright Field, he got everybody that had ever been associated with the UFO business, he got in their face and asked them to come up with anything they had in their desk or their filing cabinets.
That's incredible. I mean, and most people don't understand, they don't know about these personalities and how important or dedicated they were to this, so thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, so Wendy Connors is the one that got me looking at personalities, because I knew that, personalities are important. I've been in intelligence myself. One of the things you do is you have a folder on all your enemies' key people, their commanders and their strategists and stuff. You always have a folder on these people. But she got me thinking about this. These guys are important, and there's still some of them around, and we can still talk to them. So she got me interested in that, and of course Mike Hall. Now, they wrote a book about Ruppelt, and they wrote a book about loading, so that's where we get a lot of this information now. On Ruppelt, Mike went and talked to his wife. He got a different perspective. I mean, Ruppelt had died young. He had a heart condition, and she had a lot of things to say about, his Air Force career. She'd had a long time to think about it too. So, and like I said, they talked to people like Tolles and Rosengarten and Victor Billick, who is kind of the unofficial historian of Wright Field, or of the intelligence. In 1951, it was reorganized and became the Air Technical Intelligence Center, and it had been plussed up. All these reserve people came in to work there during the Korean War. It had been plussed up, and so they had a number of people they could give to the UFO project. Or, like I said, the career people didn't want it. They didn't want to go near it. Now, Ruppelt, in his personal papers, he describes how much he detests career Air Force officers. He thinks they're lazy. He thinks they're only worried about their career. They don't want to stick their neck out. They don't want to work hard. He's much more, since he has been an enlisted man, he's much more friendly with the Max Futch, who is the airman there, and the Air Force is less formal than the Army, so it's not so hard for let's say enlisted people to associate with officers, and Ruppelt and Futch talked and associated pretty closely, and he would tell Futch that what he thought about a lot of the officers there. He also kept records about what he thought of each one of the people that was involved with UFOs. So he had a little card file. Little, it's more like 500 or 600 cards about UFO incidents, people that were interested in UFOs, how the project worked, and things like that. I do have copies of all that. We got them from Michael Swords, who, in a roundabout way, we got Ruppelt's papers. His wife had sold them, and they ended up with Dr. Michael Swords. It's very interesting about some of the things he said. And as I said, all these guys are reserve officers. They're not going to be, most of them are not going to be career. I think one guy did go on to have a career in the Air Force. The other guys, after the Korean War was over, they were out, or before the Korean War was over. Ruppelt was out before the Korean War was over, and the only reason he stayed as long as he did was they thought they were going to have another giant saucer flap in 1953 in July, so they kept him there until July. As soon as July was over, he was gone. But he already knew in 1953 he was going to be replaced, unless UFOs did change the situation and they had another giant flap like they had in 52. So,
and I have to ask you, so you have these files, and I'm sure, knowing you're trying to scan them and get them out there so we can see them.
They are scanned.
Oh my gosh.
Most of them are scanned. The card file's scanned. I use the card file all the time. Like I say, there's a Project Blue Book files. There's the headquarters flying disc files. We have those also. Washington, D.C., headquarters intelligence flying disc files. We have lots of documents. Everything hasn't been put together and analyzed and synthesized yet, but a lot of it has. However, we just don't know a lot of things. Ruppelt tells us things in his book that are second, third, maybe even fourth hand. But in many cases, that's the only information we have about a lot of things that were going on at Wright Field or Washington, D.C. Just what he put in his book. And in some cases, he's wrong. Not all the time. Most of the time. But some of the things he gets wrong. And some of the things he kind of ignores, or you kind of wonder what was going on. I'll give you an example.
Yes, please do.
We had sent people to Europe. They were called Air Technical Intelligence Liaison Officers, in command of a full colonel. Now, during Project Grudge, the colonel would write back. He said, every once in a while we get some UFO material over here from Europe. We're interested if you want us to continue forwarding this. Well, in Project Grudge, they had shut it down and then reopened it, and it was, everybody was acting like, UFOs were not a concern anymore until Project Blue Book came on. One of the things about these Air Technical Intelligence Officers, they work directly for Wright Field. This was a great resource. They sent them, so these guys wouldn't just investigate anything. They investigated cases with substantial witnesses and substantial information. And they came up with at least 12 really good cases that they sent to Blue Book. Ruppel doesn't mention them at all in his book. The same thing in Korea. There's a giant air technical intelligence liaison office at Far East Air Force headquarters, and they've got field investigators that go out and investigate intelligence matters. And once the Project Blue Book got underway, they shifted into high gear, and they were investigating things all over Korea. They knew the people in Korea, like the 1st Marine Air Wing, they knew exactly who to tell if they had a UFO sighting. They knew that they should get in touch with the 6004 4th.
Oh, and I hear that music, and I'm so sorry to cut you off right now, but we will talk about that when we get back. I want to just thank Jan Aldrich for being here. This is our last break. I'm Erica Lukes. We will be right back.
Stand by.
This is UFO Classified with Erica Lukes.
Erica Lukes.
The phone lines are open now at 702-425-9230. That's 702-425-9230. Worldwide callers use Skype name KCOR Radio. More UFO Classified.
UFO Classified.
With Erica Lukes on the KCOR Digital Radio Network. After this.
30 seconds and counting.
Broadcasting to you from another planet, beaming you a world of entertainment.
This is the world-famous KCOR. Now listen live online at KCORradio.com.
I like everything about this station.
When do I listen? Like 24 hours a day.
It's my favorite station. I just love the music. It keeps me going at work.
There is a world outside that which we live in, a realm where fact and fiction collide. The Paradigm Matrix.
The Paradigm Matrix.
Hosted by Willie Miranda every Friday night at 6 p.m. Pacific, 9 p.m. Eastern.
The Matrix is everywhere. It is all around us, even now in this very room.
The 1-hour show that will surely leave you hanging on the edge of the rabbit hole.
The Paradigm Matrix
explores a universe of topics from UFOs, cryptozoology, conspiracies, as well as all things paranormal.
Enter a world of the twisted and deformed.
Friday night, 6 p.m. Pacific, 9 p.m. Eastern. The Paradigm Matrix. Exclusively on the KCOR Digital Radio Network, where fact and fiction collide.
Here's what happened on the last episode of Three Guys, No Ties.
You got cameras watching you, and we're just going to click, take a picture of your jaywalking.
Send you the ticket.
Here's your no one else has to see you. The camera is seeing you.
Yeah. That's just rude.
They
for a long time, right?
California does it on their toll roads.
And that's rude, too. Yeah. And don't put the inflatable woman next to you in the car and say it's,
This is America. You can put your inflatable woman wherever you want to, David.
As long as you don't get caught.
Just be who you are, man.
Three Guys, No Ties. Wednesday nights, 7 to 9 Pacific on the KCOR Digital Radio Network.
This is the world-famous KCOR.
That's the only station I listen to.
Friday night, 9 p.m. Pacific. Jump onto the Celestial Highway and travel at the speed of light. Into hyperspace. Hyperspace. Hosted by Solaris Blue Raven. She navigates you through the cosmic tides of mysticism into the world of covert technology, UFOs, mystical sciences, and the world of unforeseen forces.
You get to really sort of enjoy a bizarre ride.
Listen live Friday nights, 9 p.m. Pacific.
For hyperspace.
The one show that blows the whistle off our government black ops projects. Hyperspace. Hosted by Solaris Blue Raven.
Solaris Blue Raven.
Exclusively on the KCOR Digital Radio Network.
Want to take a ride? Take a ride. Take a ride.
You're listening to UFO Classified with Erica Lukes, where the truth isn't hidden beneath the black lines of a Sharpie.
That's the craziest thing I've ever heard.
To be on with Erica, call 702-425-9230. That's 702-425-9230. Worldwide callers use Skype name KCOR Radio.
Radio contact.
Share your thoughts on the show on Twitter by using hashtag KCOR. Or head over to the live chats at KCORradio.com.
The audience goes nuts.
And now, your host of UFO Classified.
Are you ready?
Erica Lukes.
Erica Lukes.
Welcome back, everyone. I want to, again, thank you so much for tuning in every week, for sharing information, and being so respectful. You are the reason I'm here, and I love spending Friday nights with you. Make sure you stick around for a wonderful night. Willie Miranda is up after my show, and next week I want to tell you that I will have Dr. Barry Taff here, who was a parapsychologist at UCLA back in the 70s. Very interesting. He wrote a book, UFOs Above, Ghosts Below, which talks. It's a very interesting book. It's something I've referred to quite often, and this will be a good show and a rare interview with him. Tonight I am here with someone who has contributed more than I can even express. Jan Aldrich is here. He has been researching UFOs for decades and was there at NICAP and could see everything. And we were talking about Colonel Watson and Kenneth Arnold and so much. So I hope you can listen to this interview again. Listen to part one of my interview with Jan a couple weeks ago, and I know that I will have him back. Which, I mean, I have to say, Jan, I would be happy if you were here every week. Honestly,
that's fine. What Barry has told me, we're actually doing this show is kind of like an oral history, and it needs to be archived. So he thinks it's a good idea.
And I agree with him too. And I think it's interesting how we've changed with the internet. I mean, the way that we access information has changed so much. And now you've got YouTube and all these people making videos. And I think that to hear people's voices, to hear their expressions and their stories, this is really, it's incredible. So thank you for being here. And so where do you want to go now? We've got one more segment.
We went from the idea that, of course, keeping files up, but we went through the early history of Air Force Project and the purge of the Saucer Boys and why that had an effect on the people that worked at ATIC. And let me tell you, when Watson came back, this man became a major general. I mean, he went up through the ranks. He was, like I said, he was a leader, and his ambition was to be a 4-star general and be in charge of the Air Force Intelligence Command. That was his goal. But when he came, I told you about how the people at ATIC, they didn't really want to get involved in the UFO program. Well, I don't know if you remember Colonel Friend, but he was a later Project Blue Book head. He was a major at the time, but he made like Colonel. Now, he and Hynek were good friends, and they would send tapes back and forth and write back and forth, and mostly they talked about historical things, because they didn't want to get involved too much, because the overseer was General Watson. So they wanted to keep it low-key, and people have written, and I've got a letter from an Air Force captain that went up and talked to Colonel Friend and told him about his sighting, and he said, "This has got to be the dumbest Air Force officer that exists." Now, I've talked to Colonel Friend, and he is not dumb, and he's not stupid. He's very smart, and he's dumb like a fox. But one thing he does do is, if he's cut, he bleeds Air Force blue.
Mm.
He's absolutely dedicated to the Air Force, and even in retirement he is. But he and Hynek together, they sought a way to get out from under General Watson's thumb. In other words, move the UFO project from intelligence to research and development under another group of officers and a command that would not be so negative about UFOs. That's what they were trying to do. Actually, they succeeded. And while Project Blue Book stayed at the same location, it was no longer under ATIC FTD. It was under the research and development. But the guy that was running it, he was still the same as he was. So now, one thing about Colonel Friend and the spokesman, a guy named Coleman, who had his own UFO sighting in 1954, and that's the reason the Air Force had appointed him UFO spokesman, because he would have some credibility. He could say, "Well, I had my own sighting." Both of them towed the Air Force line when they were in the Air Force. But in 2012, they went out to this UFO conference, and both of them came out of the closet and said, "We believe that UFOs are. We believe they're interplanetary, as a matter of fact," which goes further than I do. So, but Tom Toline and Brad Sparks interviewed Colonel Friend, and this is long after he's retired and long after I talked to him. And he told Sparks, he said, "Come at me with everything you've got." He didn't care how nasty he was. He didn't care. He said, "Just come after me." So it was a rather good interview, except other people that saw it said, "You were rather hard on Colonel Friend, weren't you?" And I said, "He told us to do that." I wasn't there. Sparks and Tom were. But when we interviewed Fred Durant, who had been in the CIA and who had written up the Robertson panel, he was the secretary at the Robertson panel and written up the proceedings of the Robertson panel. He said, "You guys were really hard on Colonel Friend." And I said, "He told us to be real hard on him." And he, like I said, in the end, he and both Colonel Coleman came out and said, "We believe these things are real and they're interplanetary." Now, a number of other people through the years, Keogh used to always talk about Captain Bob White, who was the Pentagon spokesman on UFOs. And in his books, you could see that he likes Captain White. Well, we have some of Keogh's notes that he made after 52, and his flying saucer conspiracy. He was going to write about Captain White, because Captain White retired from the Air Force, and he's going to say the secret is that Captain White was always a believer in UFOs. But then he wrote to Henry Holt and asked him to take that out, because he thought he'd embarrass Captain White by telling people that. He also had in Air Force intelligence in Washington, he also had an officer that was friendly to him. And of course, the Navy was friendly to him, to Keogh. And they gave him a lot of hints and whatever they could pass on. So it's interesting. Now, talking about the guys in Europe and the guys in Korea, the Air Technical Intelligence Liaison officers in Korea, and I have the intelligence report on the website there. It's about one of the intelligence officers in Korea that had kept records of all the Navy, Air Force, Marine radar cases, and then he produced a long intelligence report, everything that he had in his files on this, and sent it to Ruppelt. Ruppelt briefly mentions it in his book that he was getting good stuff from Korea, but he doesn't talk about the stuff he was getting. Everything that came out of Korea was reviewed by a general officer. These UFO reports and everything were reviewed by a general officer, and sometimes the comments were really interesting. So it would say, we have to look into this much deeper. Or there is the reliability of these witnesses is beyond reproach. Things like that. As you have a general officer saying that about you, that's pretty good. So I think you said you had some questions.
I do, and I want to ask you, first of all, with all of the people that you interacted with at NICAP, I mean, can you tell me some of your most vivid, most impactful memories with regard to NICAP when you were there?
I think now you have to remember now, we didn't have, at this time, we didn't have any idea of what was in the Project Blue Book files. I mean, we had, little snippets here, and Keogh got a few intelligence reports from him in 1952, and some of these things got out. And some people sent unclassified intelligence reports to Keogh. He had one report, it was in 1958, and it was over the Pacific, and the pilot said, I felt like I had been fired on. Of course, everybody reads, it's in Flying Saucers Top Secret. Everybody reads that and says, oh, Keogh's making this up. This is really, he's a sensationalist. I have that report. It's not in Blue Book, but found it in another place. It's just like Keogh wrote it verbatim. He didn't soup it up or anything. And that's what the pilot said. He felt he had been fired on. So, one of the things that had happened under Ruppelt is he wrote monthly, sometimes bi-monthly status reports. And those things should have been declassified in 12 years under the type of classification that they were classified under. 12 years they should have been declassified. So Don Berliner was there, and they had got word, NICAP had got word that that these things existed. They had no idea that they existed. Somebody at one of these big aerospace companies had said, they're in our library. These things are in our library. We've got copies of them. They're long past their declassification date. You guys should see if you can get them from the Air Force. So Don Berliner went down to the Pentagon and just about had with a couple other NICAP people, and they had a sit-in in the Pentagon. They're not leaving till we get them. Remember, this is the time of the sit-ins and stuff. So, and so, I mean, they had no reason to hold on to him. And as a matter of fact, Colonel Friend was in charge then, and he declassified him at Wright Field, and the Air Force gave it to him. Now, this is, since Ruppelt's book, there had not been a large amount of information that had come out of the Air Force, either by people that had been in the Air Force or by books or things. It was just whatever you found out, in the press and rooting around. And here's a whole bunch of things that Ruppelt had talked about, and here it was in official language in these status reports. And immediately they went to me, that was just amazing. That was amazing that we ever got that stuff. It was like the first crack in the wall. Then other things started to come out, and once the Condon Committee started, other things came out. The so-called Twining letter, which they had denied for over a decade. They denied that there was any such letter like that. Of course, they denied that the estimate of the situation existed. They denied a number of things, and then it turned out that they'd been lying all this time, that the Twining letter had actually been there. They made some claim that they couldn't find it. I found it easily in 4 places at the National Archives. It's obvious it was in all kinds of people's files in the United States Air Force. There was no problem finding this letter. So it was just a snow job.
And that's the thing. I think people want to get on the internet and they want to be lazy, and they don't want to go to the National Archives and do the work and do the digging, like you've done, like Keith Chester, like so many really important people have done. And for me, I just want to, because we're getting ready to wrap up the show, I want to encourage people to get out there and to be active and to find people that have been researching, get their archives. It isn't an easy thing to do, but it is, for me, this is the most important thing that I'll do. And I'm sure, Jan, that you feel the same way.
Yes, one of the most important things is to preserve UFO information. We need to do this. We don't have any academic backing or any real financial backing. I mean, it's up to us. It's up to a bunch of amateurs to do this.
Well, and I will say that I've been thinking a little bit about To the Stars and the Tom DeLonge thing, and it would be really, as much as I appreciate what they're doing to shine a light on this and to have this taken seriously, it would be wonderful if they would reach out to people like you, people that have made significant contributions, and acknowledge you or learn from the work. So it's an interesting time, and I'll just keep doing what I'm doing to make sure that I can share your story. And I want to ask you, because I have a couple more questions, but how did you get into this?
When I was in junior high, during a snowstorm in the winter, and it was thunder snow, so we're getting lightning and everything. Lightning struck the house. I'd been outside shoveling. I opened the oven where I was making cinnamon toast, and there's this ball of light inside the oven, and it looked like it was rolling over and over. It wasn't touching the grate or anything, but just above the grate. It was rolling over and over. It fell out of the oven and exploded like a cherry bomb. My father was a chemist. When he came home, I asked him what was that, and he said, "You know what the library's for? Just questions like that." So I went to the library. It took me a long time to find stuff about it because most of the scientists did not believe that such a thing existed. It's called ball lightning. But in the 1920s, a meteorologist had decided that it didn't exist, and he wrote a debunking article on it, and everybody just fell in line except a couple of people. And one of them was and so that's how I got interested in ball lightning, and from there I got interested in UFOs from that.
And I love that. I mean, and Barry wanted me to ask you specifically that story, and we've got, one more minute to go, but just give us a brief description of what NICAP, what the headquarters look like inside.
Well, it had an elevator and it had staircase. At the top of the staircase, there were, if you went to the left, there was a reception area, a small office that Don Berliner had, and then a main office with Dick Hall sitting at the end of it, and 3 or 4 other people working there, and filing cabinets. If you went across the hall to the right side, on the right side, that's where all the sighting files were. There was maybe 20 filing cabinets, and on one side were all the files in about 10 or 12 filing cabinets. On the other side, there were publications and correspondence and other related things. And there was a copying machine, and that's where the people did the work on subscriptions and things like that. And it's generally 1 or 2 people. Now they went from the 4th floor to the 3rd floor, so the plan was a little different later on. After Keel and Hall had left, and most of the people in NICAP had gone, they were in an office over on Rhode Island Avenue because they turned Connecticut Avenue, where it was, into a subway station. And they were in with an admiral and Navy captain and an Air Force general, and they let NICAP part of their office. So it's been several places.
And there are not too many pictures of the headquarters. In fact, I think there's maybe 1 or 2, right?
Almost none.
Wow.
None. And people working in the headquarters or things like that. And where's the picture of the blonde Venusian?
Dang it! Tell Barry he better get to work on that one.
Yeah.
It's so much fun to have you on, and I'm not kidding when I say that I'm going to I want to have you on again, because there's just too much information that you have to share.
Oh yes, we're just scratching the surface. That's just NICAP.
Okay, well then plan on I'll send you some dates and we'll get you back on. Thank you.
That sounds good.
I'm so excited. Thank you so much. And I want to thank all of you for listening. Please go to project1947.com and share the information. If you care about the subject, you care about the history and the people who have made such great contributions. You can also go to Barry Greenwood's site and visit his archives. I will post links on my UFOclassified.com and on my Facebook page. Know your history. This is important, and it really speaks volumes to what is going on today and the dynamics. So thank you, Jan Aldrich. Please be safe. Have a wonderful Easter. I'm Erica Luke. Stick around for Willie Miranda, and of course, a great night on KCOR. I will catch you next week with Dr. Barry Taff. Have a safe and fabulous weekend.
Listen very carefully.
This is Houston. Say again, please. Houston, we've had a problem.
This is UFO Classified, live every Friday night, 4 p.m. Pacific, 7 p.m. Eastern, exclusively on the KCOR Digital Radio Network. The truth is out there, just waiting to be discovered.
And now, if you will, accompany me on a journey to the future.
For more information on the host of UFO Classified, Erica Lukes, upcoming guests, as well as links to the past shows,
visit her website at UFOclassified.com.
UFO Classified.
UFO Classified.
This is KCOR Las Vegas, home of the Digital Radio Network.